Invite on stage our session moderator, Bodhisattva Ganguly, Executive Editor, The Economic Times. Welcome, Bodhi. Spokesperson for the BJP and a well-known political commentator, she made her mark as a spokesperson for the India Against Corruption movement led by Anna Hazare in 2011 and 2012. Please welcome a round of applause for Shazia Ilmi. She is advisor to the AAP government and oversees the Mohalla Sabha project for decentralization for the Delhi government. She is an alumnus of St. Stephen's College and a Rhodes Scholar. May I welcome Atishi Marlena. Completing the panel on women in politics, a new balance of power, is Cabinet Minister for Sports and Youth Welfare, Religious Trusts and Endowment for the BJP government in Madhya Pradesh. 3 terms MLA and 2 terms Lok Sabha member, she is the first woman to hold the industries portfolio in the state. Please welcome Yashodhara Raje Scindia. Over to you, Bodhi.
Thank you so much. Since this is a somewhat short session, so I'll come, in fact, straight to the point. Though I can't help pointing out, I've actually moderated many discussions in this in the regal room, and needless to say, for obvious reasons, both the audience and the panel is unusual. Let's put it this way. Not. Thank you. So I'll ask her, in fact, some
Can
of these
I ask the first question, why is it unusual?
Because, as I said, for obvious reasons, because of the theme of the summit.
Do we still a gender bias here?
No, Anyway, let me just first start with something which was mentioned in the visuals. That is, the Indian Parliament has the representation of women in politics is quite low. In the Indian Parliament, it's about 11%, both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And in fact, embarrassingly, we are, in Nepal, the percentage is higher. In Bangladesh, the percentage is higher. We, in fact, we are in the lowest quartile. There are many other, in fact, according to some statistics that I have with me, even countries like Somalia and Iraq have higher representation. Now, you can, of course, all argue that, all parliaments are not the same, and whether you want to equate the political system of India, which is a relatively sophisticated democracy, to that of Somalia and Iraq is another question. But nonetheless, it is an embarrassingly low figure. So if I can ask each of you to comment on why you think this is the case, and more importantly, how this can be changed. Would I first go with Yashodhara Rajeji, if you could?
Eventually, there will be parity. When is that parity going to happen is the moot question. Let me speak about Madhya Pradesh. We have about 165 BJP MLAs in Madhya Pradesh, and we have a representation of about 30-odd MLAs. Even in our cabinet, we have 31 cabinet ministers, and we have 4 women ministers. In a way, these comparisons are odious because it's all a question of moving forward. And I do believe that things will improve once you have the women's representation bill come through. And that will also happen under the Modi government. Why do I believe so? Because when a very tricky bill like the Teen Talaq Wala bill came through, and that was hurting the sentiments of many people in a particular segment of society, then I think there is a certain willpower with the Prime Minister to bring such a game-changing bill through.
Right. But
I haven't satisfied you.
No.
Okay. So here's the... I'm going to speak more at the state level. We have seen over and over again that this change that the Madhya Pradesh government has brought in, and I'm not here as a spokesperson for the BJP, I'm just saying what I see at the ground level. We have a 55% reservation now that we have put in our departments.
Right.
Yeah.
So every single department in Madhya Pradesh is going to have a 50 to 55 representation of women. that will be a game changer, except for the forest department. At the ground level, we have 50% reservation in the local bodies. So if we have 51 Jilla Panchayats, we have something like 34 Jilla Panchayat women who are the heads of their panchayats. If we have something like 14 local bodies, we have that's half of them are mayors, 7 mayors. We see this constantly at ground level, this change. There used to be a time, because I've been there now long enough, since 98. There used to be a time when the Parshad Patis used to come. That means the husbands of the Parshad. And there used to be Sarpanch Patis. And there were women like us who said, when we had our meetings, that no, you're the Sarpanch Pati. Sorry, please leave. Where is your wife? Oh, she's at home. I said, you send the car and you bring her here. Because she's the one who's elected, and we must make her empowered. You are not the one we are empowering her. So this slow and steady rise in knowledge and learning to understand what my power is at the panchayat level and at the municipal level, where we have not just nagar nigams, but we have nagar palikas and nagar panchayats, which is the lower level. You have seen in the last 5 to 8 years a sudden steadiness of women wanting to be there at the meetings, women opening their mouths and telling you exactly what they're looking at. So this steady rise is there. It's not doomsday. It is there and it is happening. It's just that you have to look at it. It depends on what prism you're looking at it from.
Shazia, yeah.
So let's just say that we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go. Thank you very much for Economic Times, this great initiative, and to all our lovely audience here, all the leaders. It's great to have these kind of interventions from time to time and take stock of the gender situation in the country. Yes, 11% is abysmally low, at something to feel, I mean, it's a pathetic state of affairs. And Narendra Modi's cabinet itself is a 25 representation of women in the cabinet, one. Within the party itself, there is already, since 2006, Sushma Swaraj Committee recommendations were implemented. So within the party, 33% reservations for the party holders is still there. But let's not go into all that. This is still very, very small a figure. Now, when we look at the larger ecosystem, at the larger patriarchal structure of a country, I would say patriarchal most generally and misogynistic also in parts, I really think we have a lot more to do. And it is whatever is happening around you, whether it's crimes against women, whether it's socio-economic indicators, where women's education is concerned, primary school rates are concerned, female feticide is concerned, dowry deaths are concerned. If you look at the larger ecosystem, a lot more needs to be done. Then I will place a rider as well. Is it the responsibility only of women leaders to work for women's upliftment? Do we not kind of let off the men? Because it is gender parity, gender justice, gender equality is mandated in the Constitution as a responsibility for everybody, all the lawmakers. So let's not let our lawmakers get away. It is everybody's responsibility, and I don't have to work just for women. I have to work for the marginalized sections, men and women. So Handsome is what Handsome does. They are very pro-women, you know, not patriarchal politicians who are men. And they're very women, and they're women who are repository of patriarchal power. Sure. So that divide has to be there. Handsome is, after all, what Handsome does.
Yeah. I think that what we are seeing in terms of these numbers is actually a reflection of the society we live in. Mm-hmm. While in many ways, many of us who are on stage here, many of the audience who are sitting on the other side, all of us come from a position of privilege. I think there would be very few of us who have had to struggle to make sure that we get appropriate, adequate health care. There's none of us who would probably have had to struggle to get admission into schools, to think about whether we can stay in school, to think about whether we can go to college, whether we can actually do a job. But even those of us who are privileged as women in India do face a lot of struggles. We face struggles in the workplace, to become partners in organizations, to wonder whether is this the appropriate way for women to behave in a workplace and whether I would be taken seriously by my male colleagues. So we are a very deeply unequal society, and I think that this deep inequality in our society is what reflects in our political space as well. But I do think that really, as people who are addressing this question of the gender gap, political participation and the presence of women in decision making really has to be front, up, and center if we are looking to reduce any of the gender gaps what we are talking about, be it a gap in terms of education access, be it a gap in terms of women in the workforce, because finally these decisions are made by politicians, by people who are in decision-making roles. And until we can crack this piece, until we can actually get women in positions of power where they can make decisions, I don't think that many of the other pieces can actually be bridged. 2-3 things though I would say, how do we bridge this gap? I think first of all, a very important piece, even in terms of policies, is actually education. I think that access to education is the first thing that would give women the ability to break through many, many ceilings at different levels. Number 2, I would actually, taking on to what Yashudhara has been saying about Panchayati Raj, etc., I think involving women in decision-making roles, even at the local level, is extremely important. I think let's not think that it's only reservation in the parliament that's going to bring about this change. And it's very interesting to see how even at micro levels, and I'll share a small example from Delhi. We have been empowering what are school management committees, community participation models in our government schools. And there you have a mandatory 50% reservation for women. And you see a lot of women participating who probably never even stepped out of their homes before. And I had one mother tell me, who lives very close to the school in an unauthorized colony on the 5th floor of an illegal construction, who has never been to school, who's probably never even stepped out of her house, tell me that since I've come on the school management committee, every morning when I'm working in the house, when I'm cleaning the house, I step out into the balcony and see whether the students have come on time. Then when I'm cooking sometime later in the day, I look out of my balcony and say whether there's proper discipline in the school. And if there's anything that's wrong, I just go down the building into the school next to my house and make sure that everything is fine. So just this small example of a woman who might never have stepped out of her home, who may not be educated, but yet is stepping into the public domain to make a difference. So that is number 2. And number 3, as far as the women's reservation bill goes, I mean, I personally have nothing against men, but the fact of the matter is that any struggle for rights for any group has to be done by that group themselves. I mean, I do not think that finally in the last resort, it's men who are going to push for the women's reservation bill. It will have to be women. It's almost like saying that were there Britishers who used to think about Indians' interests? Yes, of course there were Britishers who used to think about interests of Indians. But finally it is Indians who had to lead the freedom struggle and get independence for this country. And I think that if the women's reservation bill has to be passed, I think it is women from all party lines, and I think it's women from all walks of life who will have to organize together and strongly lobby and push for it. Because what we have seen with the women's reservation bill is a classic example of everyone pledging their support on the face of it, but no one actually doing anything. So until women are going to demand the women's reservation bill, until the politicians know that you are not going to get the vote of this 500 million, till you pass this women's reservation bill, the bill is not going to come.
May I ask you to don your BJP spokesperson or spokes hat and respond to that? I mean, it's been almost 3.5 years now into the government, and
Sure. So it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee who reintroduced it in '98, and it was reintroduced 3 times, every time by a BJP member. And as you know, how the parliament has been functioning or the obstructions have been taking place, it was Sushma Swaraj. It was that rare moment in the parliament. We saw Brinda Karat and Sushma Swaraj as well as Sonia Gandhi walking hand in hand. So obviously it will be the women because they are the stakeholders, so to speak. And it's got to happen sooner than later. So whether it's Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, or actually talking about gender parity or Ujjwala Yojana, or actual representation, actually having a defense minister as a woman defense minister, the prime minister and the government has been at the forefront of it. But I just want to tell the audience about my personal experience. Also being a Muslim candidate at a given point of time, I went to ask for votes. And this I got reminded hearing my other 2 co-panelists. And there was this Maulana, this very senior Muslim cleric whose house I went to. And he says, why are you doing this? Where are your children? You should be looking after them. Why are you asking for votes? It is not your job to come out there and ask for votes. It is not a woman's place to be in public spaces like this. And I felt very, it was really depressing to hear that. And with a very small face I returned. And I said, no, you must support me and this is important. And I came out and there were these women inside, all in the burqas and the hijab. And one of the little girls came running out, caught me ahead. He says, my mom wants to talk to you, she's here. And, the daughter-in-law of this cleric and her little daughter, who was 10, they actually asked me, and they said, don't listen to our grandfather. He's talking a lot of nonsense. You please go. We want you to win. Make sure there is a bus service closer to the house so we have better access to not just school, but even to go to the market. So to know what women want is also something that we have to get to. And I think women's reservation definitely is important. But again, to have a creamy layer, like you've seen with the OBC reservation, to have the same old families and their own, whether there's the daughters-in-law or daughters, is not the idea. The idea is to have strong women grassroots leaders who don't have godfathers, who don't have the backing of big families, to go out there to cultivate them. And for that, the overall ecosystem has to be encouraged, and basic safety has to be provided, and then education and other opportunities.
If I can ask, yeah, sorry.
It's actually also about, as Atishi said, education. The more we try to percolate education down to the lowest levels, people and women are ready to understand. Women are ready to come out. We talk about this Ujjwala Yojana that the Prime Minister did. There are so many areas where we talk about the BJP government that it hasn't done this and it's that, and be scared and don't do this. It's not that. Just see the very issues that the Prime Minister has brought through in his 3 years or 4 years. India is a behemoth. Even after 5 years, whatever you've set out to do as targets, you cannot do, because the country is so large. It has such a huge population. And within that time, at my grassroots level, because I'm an MLA, I'm not a member of parliament, I have the lowest of constituencies where everything is rural. And the women today who have Ujjwala Yojana, Bodhi, where they're given the gas chula and the gas cylinder. Why was it done? It was done because women are all the time in the kitchen. In the rural areas, they're going to cut the wood. That takes 2 hours. Then they come back. Then they put on the fire. All the smoke goes into their eyes. Then they finally get there. I know you're having a hard time with time. But this is important. Every time we have given the Ujjwala Yojana in my constituency, I make sure that I speak to every single woman to tell her and ask her feedback. What is this going to do to you? She says, I'm going to have more time for my family. I'm going to have more time for myself. The moment they say more time for myself, then you know that they're starting to think.
Yes.
So this attitudinal change doesn't come just from the men. That'll have to come, because it's your Me Too moment like in Hollywood. There will be that movement, and I see it at the grassroots level, that women do want to come out and want to be doing something for myself. At the same time as you have this parochial outlook that will have to change amongst the men, look at the women. I mean, my mother today, when you look back on her life, she was the Rajmata, great, came from a privileged house. But she actually was a civil servant's daughter that came into our house. And when she started her political life in 62, or the year my father died in 61, there were no other women except for Mrs. Gandhi. And she took on the mantle. First she was in the Congress party, then she went to the BJP, and she took on the women's rights for women in the BJP. And the BJP accepted her. People always say, oh, right-wing party, don't like women. That's not true. She was the vice president of her party, and she was at a she proved herself. And then comes the parochialism, because I remember when I was wanting to work with her in her constituency, and I was already working at the national level as an equestrian, she would keep telling me, अब मैं क्या करूं? अब तुम हड्डी तोड़ोगी तो फिर मैं शादी तुम्हारी कैसे करूंगी? So was that the be all and the end all for even people that were educated to tell us that Shadi, that's the wedding, you have to have, be a mother, you have to have your children and do whatever. So that whole system has to pass. It has to be a watershed.
So would you say that things have, you've been in politics for now long, would you say that things have improved over the years?
100%. But we still have to fight. People think that I come from a privileged background. I don't. Because I've had to fight every single way. That privilege of being Rajmata's daughter hangs so heavy on my shoulders that when you go out, people are expecting you to be in a box. And when you don't do it, then they say, oh. On the other hand, the Rajmata did only this. Now you have to start doing that plus that. How do you do it? So it's a constant work in progress. And you have to fight. Even at my level, I have to fight to just keep my space and keep myself going and keep myself motivated. But as Atishi said, it has to be a movement. It will be a movement because all the women in this room are thinking. And all these women in the room will go back and talk to their friends. And that will start the movement for more proactiveness. I'm not talking of us not being active. I'm just talking about being us so proactive. We have Naina Lal Kidwai here. We have Madam Faruqi here from Afghanistan. These are all women who are role models for all of us who all the time fight for survival.
Right. In a new political party such as AAP, are things a little bit different? Are things easier? Is it easier for women?
I believe they are. I think that some of the stories that I hear from colleagues who are in other parties, I think it is easier when you are not struggling against many patriarchal structures, when you're working in a political space that has a lot of much younger people, who has a lot of professional people. But I think that the challenges in terms of a woman in politics do remain the same. I think that we are, as I said, living in a deeply unequal society. And I think that the expectations of what a woman has to be, even when you go out into the public domain, when you're out meeting people, definitely do exist. I would like to close up with sort of repeating the same thing that I said earlier. I think there are so many educated, empowered, visionary women sitting in this room, and men also. And I do think that ensuring women's participation in the public domain, ensuring women's participation in decision-making, ensuring women's participation in politics really needs to be the centerpiece that many of us need to come together and lobby for. That we need to organize and ensure that women get that space in politics and in decision-making, because that is what is going to change our education, our healthcare, our economic opportunities. Till women are in decision-making roles, I think this gender gap is going to stay.
Shazia?
Well, I would like to request all of you to really be more proactive. I know a lot of you think politics is a dirty word, is a bad word. It is a gutter out there. And I've been a journalist most of my life, and I joined the Anna Hazare movement simply because I thought I had to do something about the way things were. So it's so important because politics really is the heart of the matter. It is where policies are made. It is where policies are implemented. It affects our lives directly, as in what the commodities prices are, as in what policies are, as to how we lead our lives, how we conduct ourselves, what is accountability of our government servants, and so on and so forth. So my only prayer, so to speak, to all of you would be that whichever party, wherever, what political engagement, mobilization is really important. It's just not all right to be an enraged citizen. It's good to be an engaged citizen. Go out there, see what's happening, and hold your MLAs, MPs accountable time to time. Please. That makes sense.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think...
We're so held accountable. It's not funny.
Thank you so much, panelists, for that very invigorating address. Thank you.